everyone, welcome back to the Analyst Vajiram and Ravi, where we bring to you detailed discussion of important articles from Hindu and Indian Express. Today is the first day of February and these are the following articles that we shall be reading in detail. The first topic is about the Paytm case. This is a news because RBI recently has imposed stringent regulations on its payment bank. So in this regard, we will read what are the payment banks and what implications will it have on the customers. Second, we will read about a new breakthrough in the technology made by a startup of Elon Musk, which is Neuralink, where it has for the first time implanted a brain chip on human brain. So this is known as telepathy and we are going to read about the same. Then we will read about the premier financial investigation agency of India, Enforcement Directorate, which has been in news for arresting the Jharkhand CM. And lastly, we will read about the Kaleshwaram project of Telangana, which has been in news because of the ongoing inquiry regarding its irregularity. So let's start the discussion. So in our first topic, we are going to analyze the Paytm case. And why is this in news? Because yesterday, RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, has barred its payment bank, which is not the startup Paytm, but its associated payments bank limited from accepting fresh deposits and also from making credit transactions with effect from March 2024. So because of these limitations imposed by the RBI, we are going to read about what is the reason of this regulatory policy, what are the implications, and end of the day, what are the payment banks. This is important from mains point of view as well as prelims point of view because in the GS3, you will get a topic banking sector and mobilization of resources and the related government policies and interventions. All of this particular topic is going to cater to. So let's start the discussion. First of all, what were the announced directions by the RBI yesterday? So first of all, it completely barred the Paytm's payment bank from offering practically all of its key services. Now, the payment bank from the Paytm was launched in the year 2018 and ever since then RBI has been after that because of some of the glitches in its regulatory policies. So it has barred key services. For example, it cannot accept deposits now. It cannot have top-ups in any customer account, be it in the FASTags or prepaid instruments or wallets, for example, Paytm, or even recharge a national common mobility card which helps you to travel via buses and metros, etc. So from now on, you cannot utilize the payment bank account for taking up any transaction. Now, all the related accounts in the payment bank will be terminated from the immediate effect. Then, the settlement of the existing transactions which are in pipeline have to be settled by March 15. That is another guideline. And finally, the customers can withdraw or use the money from their Paytm accounts until they do not exceed their available balance. So, for example, in your Paytm wallet, you have got a money of 50,000. You cannot recharge it again. You will be able to take up transactions till this balance is over or this balance ends. So what is the reason behind this action? Let's have a quick knowledge about it so as to gain awareness. So RBI has been taking into the regulatory considerations of Paytm ever since 2018 because first of all, of the concerns of the poor KYC compliance, the know your customer compliance, which is more prevalent in the banking sector, in the physical banking sector as compared to the online banking. So that is the first concern. Then some IT related issues, for example, cyber security, data piracy, etc. And data piracy has been the main reason because it has been found that the parent company 197 Communications as well as the Paytm Group and the other affiliated stakeholders have been found to be using the loopholes of this data privacy. So therefore, it was found that it does not have enough barriers to protect the information. In fact, it has been recently found that China-based entities which indirectly owns a stake in the parent company also has got access to data of millions of people who were enrolled into the payment bank of Paytm. So obviously, the RBI, because it's a regulatory body of the monetary system in India, wanted to protect the people of the depositors from exposing to such a grand risk of not just money but also of their data security. Now, let's talk about what are the payment banks. So the idea of payment bank originated from 2014. So it is a unique kind of financial instrument which was launched by RBI in 2014 by the recommendation of Nachiket More Committee. Let me write down the name, Nachiket More committee. So it was institutionalized first time in 2014, but it was only in 2017 when India had got its first ever Paytm bank, which was the Airtel Paytm bank. And now right now we have got more than 11 or up to 11 Paytm payment banks all across India. So one of them was the Paytm's payment bank. Now what is the idea of having payment bank? They provide you the basic services, the basic economic services. So when I'm saying basic services, it means that it will be able to take up the deposits. It will be able to take up the deposits. So in a bank like this, you can have current account, you can have savings account, you can have wallets, but what you cannot have is the issuance of a credit card. What you cannot have is issuance of credit or loans of any form. So therefore, what they perform is essential or very, very basic financial services. The idea was to bring in the marginalized section, the unbanked or the underbanked section of the population into the financial system, into the formal financial system. So in order to aid and develop the financial inclusion in India, this idea was created by RBI. Now this was the payment bank. Now a payment bank is basically a company which is registered under the Companies Act of 2013 and regulated by multiple provisions, including the RBI Act of 1934, the Banking Regulations Act of 1949, and not only that, the Payment Services and Settlement Act of 2007. It has all of that in the ambit. Now, what are the different features of payment bank? Now, this can be very important from prelims point of view. So, first of all, it can obviously perform very, very limited banking tasks. For example, it cannot give you loans or credits, but it can take your deposits. So, that is the first thing. Then there is a certain deposit limit as to how much you can deposit in the bank, in a payment bank. It is only up to 1 lakh per person. So, that is the deposit limit. There are many prohibitions, so you cannot form subsidiaries which can perform non-banking financial functions or which can be converted into NBFCs. So again, creation of NBFCs are not allowed. Then NRIs cannot hold deposit into it, that is another prohibition. And there of course cannot be any lending activity. What it does provide you is interoperability. For example, any deposit that is there in a payment bank can be availed via any service provider or any ATM, any bank's ATM. So it provides excellent online interoperability. Then there are certain investment restrictions as well, because whatever funds are allocated or whatever funds are kept with the payment bank can only be invested into government securities and not anywhere else. Then there is a minimum capital requirement of 100 crore for a bank to be eligible to become a payment bank. Now, what are the typical differences between a payment bank and a small bank? So let's have a quick detailed distinguishing factor analysis. So first of all, who can create a payment bank? A payment bank can be created by any prepaid card issuer or telecom companies. For example, Jio has a payment bank, Airtel has got one. It can also be created by business correspondents, NBFCs, corporates, PSUs as well. For example, Indian Post Payment Bank, that is also India Post has also created a payment bank. So all of them are eligible to promote their organization as payment bank in order to facilitate financial inclusion. Now, who can create small banks? They need certain professional experience. So at least 10 years of experience in finance or NBFC or microfinance, or at least in local area banks, that is required for a particular company or a person to promote itself or to promote the organization as a small bank. Then what they must do in order to comply with some of the regulatory guidelines provided by RBI, Paytm must have a minimum capital requirement of 100 crore. For the case of small banks, it is 200 crores. Please remember this. What about the CRR and the SLRs? Both of them have to maintain it. In the case of payment bank, they have to maintain 70% of the deposits in the form of government bonds and 25% of the deposits in other banks. Then it should have at least 26% of investment by Indians only, and get listed if net worth crosses 500 crores. So what is the criteria of being listed? It is to have the capital requirement of 500 crore. In the case of small bank, you can see that these are the similar things which are followed by the small bank as well. Now, one unique thing about the payment banks is that they cannot offer any services related to lending or credit facilitating. But for small banks, yes, loans can be availed, which can be availed up to 10% or 15% of the net worth of. So there's a capping of the loan, but it can be provided in the case of small banks. Now, what can Paytm banks do? They can provide you internet banking. They can allow you to sell in mutual fund, in insurance, in pensions. They can offer you to have wallets and do the processing of the bills therein, have ATMs and have business correspondents. They can also function as business correspondent of another bank. So all of these are pretty similar to that of small bank, but in the small bank you can also sell forex to the customer, and you can also expand it across the country and can also convert it into a full-fledged bank very easily as compared to a payment bank. So these are the broad classifications between the two. Now, what are the advantages and challenges associated with the payment bank? See, first of all, the main USP of a payment bank: accessibility, its availability, and its affordability. So first of all, the digital convenience is huge as compared to any physical kind of bank because of the online presence. Here, the online presence of, for example, the apps, for example, websites for facilitating mobile internet banking, or for example, facilitating cyber physical internet banking, that is pretty much more convenient as compared to physical banking structure. So this makes payment bank very accessible to the people. Very accessible to the people. Second is their lower minimum balance requirement, so that the people who are coming from the marginalized section, or they do not hold too much of resources, they can also come and be included into the financial sector, into the formal financial sector of India. So therefore, because of its lower requirements, lower minimum balance requirement, therefore people can be included. So it is more inclusive, especially people from the marginalized communities, for example the small business groups, or for example people with low net worth, or for example women or tribal groups, etc. Then both of the factors eventually leads to enhanced financial inclusion in the India, which is the demand of the time. This is not only required to do away with the bad practices, malpractices like money laundering, etc., but it is also important to bring in the last mile people, especially the migrant workers, etc., those who are most exploited because of the financial exclusion, so that they can also be brought into the financial regulatory ambit. Then second is their cost effectiveness. Now their cost effectiveness because of the minimum capital requirement from the government side, and therefore it is very easy to create a payment bank, and a lot many payment bank can be created in different nooks and corners of the country with very much ease. Then competition and innovation. So what happens, because there is ease to create payment bank, there will be a lot of payment bank created. Till now 11 have been created in India, and as a result you can see that because there are increase in the number, there is also increase in the competition among them, which is good for the services, which is good for the customers, because then they will be competing for innovation, they will be competing for providing quality services, and this will finally help the economy and finally help the customers. So that also improves the service quality that are provided by the payment banks. Then finally it operates under regulatory oversight. So stringent regulatory oversight of RBI is imposed. You already know that it works under the Banking Regulation Act. It also has oversight of RBI Act. It also has oversight of FEMA Act of 1999, which is the Foreign Exchange Management Act, and it has also got regulatory oversight of the Payment Services and Settlement Act of 2007. So therefore it is pretty much safe as compared to the other different kinds of banks, physical banks. Now, what are the challenges associated with payment bank? First and foremost are the limited services. They only provide you basic banking services. So if you need loans, if you need capital, this is not the best place to go. Second, it also has certain deposit limits, because there is a maximum deposit cap of 1 lakh rupee per individual. Therefore, you cannot deposit more than that. Therefore, again, this is not a very viable for somebody who wants to have heavy investments. So therefore, it restricts customer who have higher deposit needs. Then it also has limited investment option, because where can you invest using these deposits? You can only invest at individual level, either in the mutual fund or in insurance, etc. But at government level or at the banking level, they can only deposit it in the government securities. So therefore, it offers them lower returns. It also hinders the overall coverage, because the NRIs are also not allowed, so the coverage is low. the returns are low, so their profitability is also lower as compared to other banks, for example small banks and large banks. Then therefore definitely there is limited funds, there are limited customer bases, which limits its success overall, and finally it is heavily technologically dependent. Therefore it requires interventions like robust data flow. It requires robustness against system failures, against cyber threats, against service disruption, because all of them can again fail it on the grounds which made it advantages. For example, the grounds of accessibility, availability and affordability, all of them will be compromised if you do not have a robust internet connection or you do not have a robust system. So these were some of the challenges which needs to be catered if you want to have proper financial inclusion via payment banks. Now coming to the next topic, this is the Neuralink Telepathy. So this is a startup that has been found in 2016 by Elon Musk, who's been one of the co-founders, and it has finally led to development of the first ever human brain ingrained chip. So it's a kind of brain chip that has been finally implanted into human for the first time for various purposes. And the name of this chip is telepathy. And this is the context why we are going to read it. This is going to be a very important question for prelims, can also be asked in mains, because the associated topics would be artificial neural networks, would be brain computer interface technology, would be biocomputing. So all of these also needs to be read because this topic has emerged in news. So let's start with the key technology which is underlying this Neuralink startup. So this is to create chips which are basically providing brain and computer interface. So this is a kind of BCI technology, the brain computer interface technology. So now just imagine that you are endlessly doom scrolling your Instagram and suddenly your brain sends you a signal that please stop it, like you're wasting too much of your time, and immediately the Instagram shuts off. Or just imagine that you are sitting in a far off place like Ladakh and suddenly you start missing your parents and your phone immediately calls your parent. So this is what your computer or your gadget or your electronic device is taking signals from your thoughts, signals from your brain. So this process is known as brain computer interface, and the technology which enables this is known as a BCI technology. So what are these Neuralink chips? What are these BCI chips? These are the implantable chips or implantable BCI technology that facilitates direct communication between a human brain and any external devices, that is the machine. Therefore, it bridges the gap between the brain and a machine. How does it do? Because we have got interface of a chip which is known as the BCI chip. And what this chip does, it has got electrodes in it. So because of which it is able to take the signals from the brain with the help of these electrodes, and then it is able to translate it into digital code. Now this digital information is then understood by your machine. And finally what happens, end of the day you see that your machine is taking commands directly from your thought process or from the signals of the brain. This is the main principle behind the BCI technology on which the telepathy or the Neuralink telepathy is based. So it uses surgically implanted electrodes. These electrodes are also known as links or the chips to detect and transmit the neural signal. They decode the signal, and this decoded signal enables the individual to control the devices, just as I have told you in the form of an example, how you are able to control your computers or your other gadgets or mobile phones just on the basis of your thoughts. So this was about the BCI technology. What is the goal? Why are they being developed? So first of all, it is to enhance the human capabilities. For example, a person who is suffering from, say, paralysis, he is not able to guide his body movement, his physical movement, or is not able to give command to any mobile or computers. Via this technology, via this BCI technology, the person will be able to operate the gadgets with a very higher speed as compared to those operating it with hand. So first of all, it enhances the human capabilities, especially those which are disabled. Then it can also help to treat the neurological disorder, and this is what is claimed by the current telepathy device, that it is aiming to cure some of the neurological disorders related to the spinal cord injury. It will also be helpful in curing disorders like dementia, Alzheimer's disease, etc. Then it will also help us to explore the potential of merging human consciousness and AI and see what kind of magic it creates around the world. So this chip is going to be a coin-sized chip where you can imagine 5 coins decked up together with a biocompatible enclosure so that it doesn't produces antigen response inside the body, because as you know, whenever a foreign element is transplanted into the human body, it can create some of the immune responses. So it has to be enclosed with a biocompatible enclosure within which it has got a battery which is controlled by a kind of remote control which is installed in the ears. So battery that will be charged wirelessly by the help of that remote control, and it will be having certain chips and electronics to process the signals that are coming from the brain, and finally it is going to have a flexible and ultra thin threads which are acting as an electrode and attaching itself to different neurons of the brain. So they are surgically implanted inside the brain, as you can see, and then they try to control the activities of the brain or interpret the neurological activity of the brain and give us due digital response. So that is how we are going to create a digital brain or a digital mind. Now, what are the challenges associated with a technology like this? Because technology is a double-edged sword and it has got its due share of challenges. In this particular case, first of all, it was heavily opposed in the earlier parts of its researches. It was heavily opposed by the animal rights activists, saying that it has been unduly tested on the primates. Many of them are alleged to be killed due to shocks or due to the heat transmission or due to the brain tissue damage. So therefore, first of all, its test on the primates is the first bone of contention. Second is its serious consequences on the health of the human. While it has been passed by the FDA under the FDA guidelines of USA, still it can possess some of the long-term health risk on the human brain. First of all, it can cause tissue damages or tissue wear and tear. Why? Because it has electrodes. Over the time, it can lead to heat generation, which can rupture the neurons or which can essentially also cause wear and tear in the tissues. Then it can also provide antigen response, a very heavy immune response from the body, because end of the day, you are installing a foreign substance into the body. So in the longer run, maybe not in the shorter run, but in the longer run, you can have a very strong antigen response, which can be very detrimental to humans' health. Then the stability of the placement is also questionable, because we are moving creatures. If we keep moving, this transplant will also, the stability or the staticness of the transplant will also be a thing of question. So stability is also one of the concerns. And finally, the concern is regarding privacy, because whatever I'm thinking is getting converted into digital code. What if somebody has the access to this digital code? And currently, we do not even have privacy regulations of AI. Then what about this advanced level of AI, which is creating deep minds or which is creating digital minds? So what about the security, privacy and security concerns about the digital mind? So that is the biggest bone of contention, the privacy concern. How do you protect the neural information from the unauthorized access, which can again be very detrimental from the mankind? So these are some of the challenges which needs to be catered. And now the next topic is about the Financial Investigation Enforcement Agency of India, the Enforcement Directorate, very famously in news because on Wednesday it has arrested Jharkhand CM Hemant Soren in the land scam case. So what gives ED the power to detain someone or to detain in the cases of financial investigation? We are going to have a deeper analysis on the same, but more from the prelims point of view. So first of all, what suggests the name Enforcement Directorate? What is it enforcing? It is responsible for enforcement of the constitutional laws, especially regarding the financial laws. So the constitutional and the financial laws, enforcement of the same are duly given on the hands of Enforcement Directorate. Now, it is a directorate because it is a dedicated attached office under the Department of Revenue in the Ministry of Finance. So therefore, it is a directorate, it is a special attached office. Now, it is a premier financial investigation agency which performs multi-dimensional function because it takes care of the financial laws not only related to money laundering but also related to the foreign exchange laws and also related to the fugitive economic offences, etc. So it takes care not only of the money laundering related offences but all the other offences related to corruption or all the other offences related to foreign exchange violations. So therefore, it is a multidisciplinary organization. Therefore, ED has been in news more than CBI or more than NIA. Now, talking about its origin, it was first initiated in the form of Enforcement Unit, which was responsible for enforcing the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1947. Later, it became ED. It became ED in the year 1960, and that is when it got transferred from the existing Department of Economic Services to the Department of Revenue. So currently it is a directorate under the Department of Revenue. What is the typical structure of enforcement directorate? And by the way, it currently is not taking care of the FAIR Act because it has been amended and various other foreign exchange laws have been consolidated into the FEMA Act, Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999. So it takes care of the violations related to the FEMA Act and it is empowered by the same. What about the typical structure? So it is headquartered in New Delhi, and it is headed by the enforcement director. There are multiple special enforcement directors at the regional level. So there are 5 regional offices to it in Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata and Delhi, basically the metro cities along with Chandigarh. What about the recruitment? The recruitment of the ED officials are not done via any exam, but it is done through direct selection of the existing officers holding the position of IRS officer, IPS, IAS or maybe excise officers etc. via SSC and UPSC examination. So they are directly recruited. What does the typical tenure look like? Typical tenure of the ED directors is of 2 years, but in the 2021 amendment that was made, the CBI director and the ED director's tenure was extended and the power was given to the central government to extend it up to 5 years. So by extending it up to 1 year per time, you can extend it up to 5 years. So it can be extended from 2 to 5 years by giving 3 annual extensions. And who decides whether they have to be given annual extension? There has to be a special committee for the same. The special selection committee for the same. Then what about the different functions? Because as we know that this is multidisciplinary body. So what are the multiple disciplines it deals with? Largely deals with the financial laws only, but mostly about the foreign exchange violation. The foreign exchange violations are taken care by 2 acts primarily in India. One is the Consolidated Act, the father of all, that is the FEMA Act, the FEMA Act of 1999. So which gives it the power to investigate, to adjudicate and to penalize the person who has been found violating the FEMA Act provision. And it also gets the power to have preventive detention of the person who has been found contravening the FEMA Act under, not the FEMA Act, but the Coffee Post Act, that is the Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities 1947. So its functions are to investigate, to adjudicate, to penalize and also cause preventive detention of the economic offenders under the FEMA Act. Then it also has got jurisdiction of the money laundering. So what is money laundering? It is basically whitewashing the money, making it appear to come from the legal sources, while in the reality it has came from illegal sources. So it also helps, it is also the main body for concerned with the prevention of money laundering in India. So it is empowered for tracing the assets that are derived from the proceeds of crime of money laundering, provisionally attach the property, ensure the prosecution of the offenders, that is why it can take it in jail, and also confiscation of the property on immediate basis. All of these powers are given to ED. Then finally, enforcement of Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. It has also been empowered under this one. Fugitive economic offenders are those which fly away from India, for example Vijay Mallya. So it also enforces, it can also go after Vijay Mallya, not just in this country but also across, and helps. It also empowers ED to attach and confiscate their properties. So this was about a brief introduction and description about the Enforcement Directorate. Now finally, we will talk about the Kaleshwaram project of Telangana. Why is this a news? Because ever since the finding of the irregularities, especially that happened in the barrages, there are multiple barrages which are operating in the Kaleshwaram project, and it has been found that some of the piers inside them have been submerged, so which compromise the safety, the structural stability of the Kaleshwaram project, which is a very important project for India because it is the world's largest multi-lift irrigation project. So this is a news because of the ongoing inquiry by the Vigilance and Enforcement Department, which has revealed more defects than ever. That was revealed in 2017. So there was a huge crack that has been developed, as you can see in the radial gate hosting the Metigadda barrage of Kaleshwaram project. This has been one of the news. Many such irregularities have been found, and therefore we need to read about the Kaleshwaram project. The first thing that you need to question is, where is this project located and what is this project about? So first of all, it is located in the Telangana district. Why in Telangana? Because it is mostly drought ridden. because it is which rivers fed it are not perennial, they are rather seasonal rivers, and because of which it is highly compromised with the water security. In order to ensure that, in the year 2007, Kaleshwaram project was launched. And when in 2014, so initially it was launched for the state of Andhra Pradesh, which had Telangana itself. But in 2014, when Telangana and Andhra Pradesh were split from each other, then at that time this was renamed as Kaleshwaram Multipurpose Lift Irrigation Project. So the earlier name, the 2007 name, was the Pranhita Chevala Project. Why is this name? Because at Kaleshwaram, the Godavari river and its left bank tributary Pranhita, they converge, and this is where we would want to take the full utilization of this convergence and bring this water to the other drought-ridden districts of Telangana. So it basically facilitates and helps about 13 drought-ridden districts of Telangana. So this makes it the world's largest multi-purpose lift irrigation project. This is multi-purpose because it not only helps us to deal with the water security issues, it also helps us to provide irrigation in the drought-prone districts of Telangana. It is said to cover about 1 crore acre of land. It is also supporting with the transport to facilitate the movement or the cheaper movement of goods and people within the state of Telangana. It also helps to provide power generation, to develop the hydroelectric power, to also ensure the energy security. It also helps to support the water recharge projects, for example, creation of tanks via Mission Kakatiya and Mission Bhagirathi, which is taken up by the government of Telangana in order to ensure the full-time supply of water, especially the pipeline supply of water to the residents of Telangana. And finally, it also helps us to have groundwater restoration by replacement of the groundwater recharges or groundwater resources by canals. So now the irrigation will not use the groundwater, rather it will be using the canals that are being developed under the Kaleshwaram project. So why is it named as Kaleshwaram? Because it is located, this confluence of the Pranhita river and the Godavari river takes place in the town of Kaleshwaram, in this part of Telangana, and therefore it is named so. It is built over which river? On Godavari river. Okay, and it covers about 500 kilometers of not just one district, not just the district having Kaleshwaram, but about 13 districts, and has a canal network of about 1800 kilometers, which is facilitated by multiple barrages. As you can see in the diagram, there are multiple barrages: the Medigadda, the Anaram, the Medaram, all of these barrages, and the constructional issues related or the constructional stability related to these barrages are a point of concern, and that is ongoing in the enquiry. So this is all about today's current affair discussion. I hope you have liked it. Thank you so much and have a nice day.